The money that's being thrown around is eye-watering. It's very much like a gold rush.
Of the 7 million people who are unemployed in this country, 1 million of them are right here in California. But at the same time, we're seeing this boom of AI jobs. How do you reconcile the two?
It is just that. It is two separate economies. And that's why a lot of young people, even talented young people, are thinking, I don't know if I can make it here in the Bay Area.
Let's take you beyond the headlines to the front lines with our team of journalists to explain how we find the stories and answers you're looking for. It's not enough to know what happened, but why? Because when you're searching for the truth, there's always a backstory.
Just for a second, think about all the different kinds of work that need to get done in an office. Okay, got it? Well, as much as 70% of those tasks are likely to become automated just within the next 5 years, thanks to AI. That's according to one industry estimate. Artificial intelligence is not only reshaping the workplace, but also California's economy. And while some have been lucky enough to ride the AI boom, others have already seen their livelihoods go bust. So what does this mean for your ability to financially make it in the Golden State? And what does it have to do with RoboCop? I caught up with our business and tech reporter, Scott Budman, to get the backstory. How would you describe the vibe right now in Silicon Valley?
It is all about AI. It feels very much like a bubble. We've been through these before. They're very exciting. The money that's being thrown around is eye-watering. We've seen that before. It's very much like a gold rush. Very much like a gold rush.
Okay, so I want to throw some numbers out at you. Of the 7 million people who are unemployed in this country, 1 million of them are right here in California. But at the same time, we're seeing this boom of AI jobs. How do you reconcile the two?
It is just that. It is two separate economies. There is a boom in AI jobs. And if you have AI skills, whether you're coming out of college with them or already working with them, you are in a position to make more money than in any time in your life and your career. However, if you don't have AI skills, your job is in jeopardy, your future is cloudy, and that's where the rest of California's economy comes in. The overall economy is struggling a bit. We have a slowdown. We have Elon Musk buying Twitter and cutting 75% of the staff, and say what you will about Twitter, now X, it's still up and running. That was a very interesting and dangerous message to tell CEOs across California and across tech. You can trim the sails of your company and still function and still make money and still work.
Okay, so it's rarely ever just one thing. So give us a sense, what are the factors right now contributing to having such a high unemployment rate?
I mean, you've got a lot of cutbacks, a lot of efficiency. You have a stock market telling companies, tech and otherwise, if you cut costs, we will boost your share value. Good news for investors, bad news for employers. You're seeing a lot of that. You're seeing that even from some companies that are making trillions of dollars. Meta cut way back and saw its stock price go from 90 to 700 in a couple of years. We've seen companies say, we're going to please investors at the expense and at the cost of a larger workforce. And so you really have to be in the right place as an employee right now, and that's how you get a high unemployment rate.
Okay, so you mentioned we've seen something like this before. Of course, in the 90s, we had the internet startups, and you had the surge of other tech startups, Facebook, Google, Airbnb in the 2010s. Oftentimes when there's a boom, there's a bust.
Yes.
Is that what we're going to see?
I mean, inevitably, not all these companies are going to succeed. That's never happened. We've seen booms turn into good times. Even the dot-com boom, where so many companies didn't succeed and were part of a bubble, and when that bubble popped, we saw tens of thousands of jobs lost just like that. But we got the internet out of it, and we got the iPhone out of it, and we got apps out of it, and we got Google, and like you say, Airbnb. Changes to our lives that are with us to this day came from the mid and late 90s. That's a pretty decent legacy, even though a lot of people had to sort of reconfigure their career and get back into the workforce. It's very likely that this will happen. Not all of these AI startups that are having amazing valuations are going to even succeed, not to mention go public and, justify those valuations to investors. But what we'll get out of it, that we don't know. But AI seems to be changing the way a lot of businesses operate, even schools operate. We have entire majors at colleges in AI. And so this is going to be here to stay. The question is, in what way and just how big is it really going to be?
Okay, so if you have the kind of tech skill set that's putting you in high demand of these AI jobs right now, I mean, salary-wise, Scott, give us a sense. I mean, what are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about some basic salaries. Tech companies often pay salaries that are a little lower because there is back-end promise of wealth. You have stock options, and those stock options are really what fuel Silicon Valley's wealth in terms of I can buy a $3 million home, not because necessarily of the salary I make at a tech company, but I can buy that home because when my company goes public, I can cash in those options and have vast wealth. And that's traditionally what we've seen. Now, AI, we have seen a sliver of this where the salaries are really like NBA salaries. They're incredible. And that's because we have these startups like OpenAI, Anthropic, that are paying decent money, but boy, do they have back-end wealth promise. One day they'll either be bought for hundreds of billions of dollars or they'll go public at those valuations. The big companies like Microsoft and Meta especially, you see Mark Zuckerberg trying to cherry pick employees from these startups. He has to promise them gigantic money because Meta is already public, and very successfully so. But if you start now, you're probably not going to get rich off the stock. So he's offering $100 million bonuses over 3 or 4 years to come to work for the established company. And that can be enticing for several reasons. One, you're getting a giant salary and giant money, but B, your company is going to be around for years and years and years, so there's more stability instead of wondering, am I going to be at the startup that makes it, or am I going to be at the startup that ultimately does not make it?
So to connect the dots for people, I mean, these are the same people that are living in communities with school teachers,
yes,
other blue-collar workers going to the same grocery stores, competing for the same daycare spots.
Yeah.
What is that doing then?
It does raise the prices of neighborhoods. I mean, I live in a very basic neighborhood in the South Bay. I remember we had a Google family. After a while, they pretty much had to move out. Like, it was just too basic of a neighborhood. They went and got a much bigger place. And it's raising the prices of homes, even basic homes, to a level we have not seen before. And that's simply because there is this section of wealth being created by tech companies, by stock options, that dwarfs everything else that we've ever seen before. And that's why a lot of young people, even talented young people, are thinking, I don't know if I can make it here in the Bay Area unless I have those AI skills. Because for their adult life, say the past 4, 5, 6, 7 years, that's been the hot ticket.
What is sort of the end game here? I mean, how do we right-size the ship?
My worry about that long game is that those young, talented people say, I have to go somewhere else, whether it's Boston or Austin, Texas, or Florida, because no matter what your political beliefs, there's a place for you where you can afford housing. And the dream of Silicon Valley was to get those people here, and not just from America, but from India, from China, from Israel, from the UK, from Ireland. This is the default. Now we're telling people from all over the world, you have to have so much money if you want to do that American dream, have a family thing here, and start the company that creates all those jobs. And that's a rough 1-2 punch unless you already have that money. And my worry is that those young people will say, the default is no longer Silicon Valley. It's now somewhere else where I can afford to start a family, a very basic human want.
So right now across America, the average mortgage is about $2,500 a month. In San Jose, it's more than $11,000.
Yeah.
How do you compete?
You really can't. If the average home costs $2 million, the average home costs $2 million, Bigad, that means we're asking of you, a young person or a young couple, a young family, to come up with, as a 20% down payment, $400,000, a very intimidating amount of money to have and put towards the house, and the privilege of paying that $11,000 a month mortgage. So one gigantically intimidating amount of money in order to pay another one every month. And, do the math. It's a really, really hard thing to fathom if you're just now even saying, I've got a good salary. The next logical step would be to buy a home.
Let's talk about sort of the trickle-down impact to San Francisco, the look and the feel. We're in a city that used to have the nation's lowest office vacancy rate. Just 4% of office space was available.
Yeah.
The pandemic happened, and while things have improved a little bit, 35% of office space in downtown San Francisco is still sitting empty. Yet we're in the midst of this AI hiring boom. Do you think that may help things, or is much of this still going to continue to be sort of get to work remotely?
Yeah, here's the thing. It's already helped things a lot. That vacancy rate would be much higher if it weren't for the AI boom, because a lot of the AI talent went to startups in San Francisco. They're flush with venture cash, Bigad, and so they can afford whatever office space in San Francisco they want. And they can afford, obviously, these employees to bring in. So that vacancy rate would be much higher if it wasn't for the AI boom. That said, it's still high. The great experiment of let's see if tech companies can have people work from home kind of worked a lot better than people thought, way better than people thought. Numbers were met. Deliveries still went on time. Stock prices stayed high, in fact, hitting some records during the actual lockdown phase of the pandemic. And it turned out, as long as you had your Peloton and your Netflix and your, Instacart, you could pretty much live just fine. And then all of a sudden it was like the Salesforces and the Apple saying, wait a minute, we didn't spend billions of dollars on these gigantic, incredible corporate headquarters so you could be at home on your Peloton. We want you back. And that's been a tough push-pull kind of thing, because the employees have a really good point when they say the bottom lines were still good when we were at home, helping our children, not having to worry so much about childcare, not having to commute in traffic as long, being able to spend more time with our spouses and our families. And aren't those great things in the work-life balance of it all?
Is part of the recruitment process still sort of selling the lifestyle of being in big tech? We have, hockey tables that you can play with in your lunchtime. We're going to do your dry cleaning. Or is it now, you should be lucky that you're working for us and be prepared to work a lot of hours?
I think it's a combination of all of those things. You are expected to work a lot of hours. It really is demanding. It's always been demanding. That said, there are meals, there is dry cleaning, there are volleyball courts, there's fitness centers. The idea that you can make your life around your tech campus is still there, and it never really went away. They want you there, and they want you there for a long time, and they want you interacting with your fellow smart, creative people to come up with the next big thing.
Obviously, other tech hubs across the country, Austin, New York City, but it seems like California is laying out the biggest welcome mat so far.
Yes, the most AI jobs are in California, not surprisingly. The most AI graduates are coming out of schools in California, also perhaps not surprisingly. But right, if you go to DC, people are talking about it. If you go to Texas, people are talking about it. If you go to Boston, they're talking about that, and biotech. A lot of places right now are saying, how can we integrate this technology that seems to be coming at us like a train down the track? We have to figure out a way to put it in. And it's so interesting now that every company is talking about, well, we do AI. What does that mean? Sometimes it seems like they don't yet know, but they feel the need to make it part of what they do. And that's why you have colleges giving AI majors. That's why you have these Coursera's and these companies that are offering AI classes to those of us who are already long out of college. But to say this is what you need to know, at least in a fairly basic sense, if you want to be able to tell your boss, hey, I get this, I can be part of this, I understand this, so don't just eliminate my job. Let me be part of the growth that this could be, apparently. But again, we don't yet know what that is, but we know it's going to be around for a while, and we know that everybody is talking about it, and venture capitalists who have been quiet for years are now throwing with both hands money into this technology. But the AI concerns are still very big, and I don't just mean AI might take our job. I mean, we are of a generation that grew up watching RoboCop, for example, which kind of pre-told us about AI and, rogue machines, corporate greed. And by the way, it said, this is in the mid-'80s, Detroit is going to go bankrupt. It was right about a lot of things in this one movie, which sort of presaged a time of not what our parents had, which was post-Watergate mistrust of government, but what we grew up with, a mistrust of the job world, of the greed world. It was also right before the big crash of '87, RoboCop. So not to bring everything back to this one movie, but it was oddly prescient. And when you grow up with that view, it doesn't really surprise you to see the Occupy Wall Street of it all, the Zohran Mamdani of it all, the idea that, wait a minute, corporations have really been about themselves and not about you, the worker or even the resident of the town. And there's still that mistrust that AI has to somehow get over before I think people are willing to do more than just ask ChatGPT a question. And so the people who are running these companies are saying, you know, Mark Zuckerberg talking about superintelligence. This is somehow going to make your life better. And people are saying, wait a minute, my job is at risk. I'm priced out of the place I love and want to live. It's harder to feed my family because those who do make this much money are leading to inflation. Once again, we have this, are we able to even trust these big tech corporations? And so AI is successful in some ways, but in another way, it's sort of bringing back that mistrust. And do we even believe this going forward?
And from an economic perspective, for sort of the good of the community at large, even those not in the AI space, is that going to continue to benefit those in California with the continued recruitment of AI jobs, particularly centered here in the state?
In some ways it will, because we will be saying, hey, come to California and here's how we're going to compete with the other states. And even on a company by company level, here's how we're going to compete with the other companies trying to recruit you. But California has a disadvantage that you referred to earlier, Bigad, which is the cost of living is so high here. And so we can compete with the salaries. We can compete and say, oh, you like to ski? Go that way. You like the beach? Go that way. I mean, wonderful things as a California native myself that I will talk about forever. On the other hand, the idea that you can afford a home here is harder and harder to tell somebody. And that's a big part of it, too, is, hey, come here, but you may really have to downsize. And if you don't have to downsize where you are, but you can still make a good salary and get those stock options, some people will just choose not to come here.
Enjoying the beauty is one thing, but having to pay $4,000 for a one-bedroom apartment or $2,000 for daycare a month?
Yeah, I mean, I because of how old I am, I have a lot of friends whose kids are in college, getting out of college, thinking about the next move. And one thing I hear a lot is, wow, it feels really intimidating to live here, whether even as a renter, which many of us did in our early 20s, or as a someday home buyer, which many young people are telling me is not even on their radar.
Can't make it work.
Right. That's sad, and that means we're going to lose a lot of those young people, and therefore their energy, their ideas, their future.
And that's a potential selling point for some of these other tech hubs that are trying to pull people away.
100%. I remember an ad in Silicon Valley from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and at a big field, a bunch of grass. It said, where you live, this is a park. Where I live, this is a backyard. And I get it.
Scott Budman, business and tech reporter extraordinaire. Scott, thanks.
Anytime, thank you.
Having an entire park as a backyard would be a lot of maintenance. So just remember, the grass isn't always greener. Okay, if you like getting the backstory, good news. We have a lot more of it. So be sure to like and subscribe and let us know what you think about all this. You can also find me on any of your favorite social media platforms, @Bigad Shaban. And on behalf of all of us here at NBC Bay Area News, thanks for tuning in. And remember, when you're searching for the truth, there is always a backstory.